King Cake King here, back on this dreary Sunday afternoon, watching a little Saints game, and of course, tasting king cakes. What I have here is a Muffuletta king cake from Zuppardos. And you can see they hit us with the paid sticker, because that's what we do. We pay for our king cakes. Now, for this king cake, I have my special guest here, Scott the Traveler, that's going to critique this. But this thing is so heavy, we're going to weigh it first. So, I'm going to tap this scale really quick, and I'm going to first weigh myself. Now, for those viewers out there, keep in mind, this has a lot of king cake garb on it. So I am 238 pounds, but that is my winter king cake weight, so don't be disturbed. I'm going to hit the scale again, zero it out, and I'm going to step on it with the Muffuletta king cake. As you can remember, I was 238. This is now saying 244.
6 pounds.
This Muffuletta king cake weighs 6 pounds. So it is one of the heaviest king cakes I have held. But let's get into the tasting of this thing.
I do want to say one thing. It is a very heavy king cake. One thing in my travels for king cake that I've noticed is Alabama is a state that has a ton of heavy king cakes. And I think of two bakeries in particular in Alabama. One is Lighthouse Bakery on Dauphine Island. The other is the Goodies Gourmet in Daphne, Alabama, which I believe won third place overall at your recent KingCakePlanet.com extravaganza. So as you can see, this is a very large sandwich. It would feed a lot of people. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of history on the Muffuletta. The Muffuletta is named for the bread. The loaf of bread that comes from Sicily is called a Muffuletta loaf. So clearly this is not a traditional Muffuletta. It's not a Muffuletta loaf. It looks like it's a large circular Italian loaf formed in the shape of a king cake. When New Orleans had that huge influx of Italians in the mid to late 20th century, the Italians brought their food back with them. And initially, there was no such thing as a Muffuletta. What people would do down in the French Quarter, the Italian men would go have a lunch. They would go to the Italian deli. They would get sliced meats. They would get a loaf of bread. And then they would go back to work and put the meats, cheese, on top of the bread. It was only later, some people say Central Grocery, some people say Frank's. There's a lot of debate about who actually constructed the Muffuletta in the store. Not that it matters that much, but now Muffuletta is very much a very popular sandwich in New Orleans. I once asked the famed New Orleans food critic Richard Collin, where does the pronunciation Muffuletta come from? Because if you actually pronounce it as it's written, it would be Muffuletta. And he told me that back in the 50s or 60s, one of the local hamburger places sold what was called a lot of hamburger, or a hamburger lotta, I can't remember exactly, but somehow that got transformed into the Muffuletta, and now everyone in New Orleans calls it a Muffuletta. But at Central Grocery, you better say Muffuletta, or they may correct you.
Traveler, that is great history, but I want to get to this tasting.
I'm sorry,
okay?
I'm sorry.
When I look at presentation, it is not as pretty as the king cakes that we have been reviewing. It is not as pretty as Don Fong. It is not as pretty as some of the Bromarks. It is gives that hint of a little bit of darkness, right? I can see the sprinkles are, it looks like sesame, and they're not a true gold, right? But they still look pretty good. As you can see, this is almost feels like a triple decker sandwich. Great olive mixture I see in the middle there. It's got the cheeses, it's got the two meats.
I think it has 3 or 4, probably some mortadella, maybe, I don't see any capicola. It definitely has ham, and it looks like a little pepperoni as well. But I do want to say, I believe we tried to recreate a Muffuletta king cake last year, and we did the sesame seeds. We dyed them, so I don't want to fault them too much because we got the same result. There's something about sugar uptakes that dye very well, whereas sesame seeds, there's that dull look that you were just mentioning.
This is true. So let's go ahead and take it straight to our first category, presentation. The presentation for me on this is going to be a little bit below average. You know, I'm in the king cake mood, and it's got to be better, a little bit better than this, a little bit more pizzazz. So I'm going to give the presentation a 7. What hits me is that it's going to be a lot of food, and it's not as pretty as I would like. What's your presentation score?
I'm going to give it a 9 too. I think it's beautiful. They're muted colors, and I love muffulettas. It looks delicious to me.
First bite. It's pretty muffuletta-ish. That's kind of what I was expecting. There's absolutely no sweet. For our second category, the icing, there does look to be a very thin layer, you can see right here, a very thin layer of cheese. So we're gonna call that layer of cheese the icing. I feel it could be a little bit more melted. It seems a little bit straight, so a little bit more melting would have been better. Scott, I'm gonna give the icing a 7. I'm gonna give the icing a 7. What do you think the icing is here, Scott?
I want to say that was very observant. I didn't even notice that cheese when I picked it up. You know, it's interesting that it is melted. That brings up that whole debate about muffulettas. Should they be served at room temperature, which I'm a very strong proponent of, or should they be heated? If it was just cold cheese on top, I actually think it would detract from this. So I agree with your 7.0 score there as well.
Very good. We're gonna move over. Usually I do dough last, but this sucker, as you can see, the filling, which I call the meats and the olives and all of that stuff, overpowers this king cake. So I'm gonna leave that at the last part. I'm gonna go ahead and rate the dough right now. In my first couple bites, the dough is a little bit dry. However, that's what a muffuletta usually has to go with it. So I'm gonna give that a average score, since I think it is right on par with a muffuletta. I'm gonna give it a 7.5. Scott, I'm gonna give the dough a 7.5. What do you think?
So the dough is very much like a Zuppardos Italian loaf. It would be a whole lot better if that was straight out the oven. You know, we picked this up, it was in the refrigerated case. So, you know, it's lost some of that freshness. I'm gonna be a little more critical as well. 7.2 for me.
So let's move to the filling, and this is what I really wanted to get to. The filling, so I'm used to some olive mixtures here in New Orleans, and this olive mixture is very nice. It's not too slimy. I think some olive mixtures get a little bit too oily and too slimy. That could be because the bread has soaked up some of the oils, but I really enjoy this olive mixture. I think it is complemented with the cheese and the meat. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 layers of meat and cheese. I love that. I love the presence and the big bite. It's almost like you're eating a Big Mac, muffuletta, king cake. Love it. So I'm giving the filling, I'm going high on the filling. I'm giving it an 8.5 for the filling.
Wow, that's great. So, you know, it's got the classic muffuletta olive mix on top. It's got the carrot, it's got the olive, it's got the cauliflower, a little bit of celery. I don't see any capers in this. And I actually do like capers in my olive mix. I do like how there's both green and black olives in it. I think they don't have enough olive oil in it, unfortunately. I don't know if this is a house Zuppardos olive oil or olive mix, or are they using Boscoli's? Are they using Central Market? I'd actually like to know that from Zuppardos. So if Zuppardos wants to let us know, that'd be great. I think it's a great amount of meat. Is it as high quality meat as Central Grocery? No, but Central Grocery nowadays does not give you even half that much meat. So I'm gonna give it a pretty high score, a good value for money there. I'm gonna give it an 8.9.
No, very good.
So could you give me your filling one more time? I'm gonna write that and do the calculations here.
You missed the filling score?
I did. I was distracted.
8-5, Traveler, 8-5.
8-5.
So
I'm gonna,
while he's totaling up these scores, just want to mention a few tidbits. Last year, you had to pre-order these Muffuletta king cakes with Zuppardos. Fortunately for me and the Traveler, we visited today and they had them already pre-made in the refrigerator, so we just went and picked ours up. So keep that in mind next time you're at Zuppardos. Also, I want to say, I think I'm speaking for the Traveler. This savory king cake is very warranted. We've been eating a lot of sweet king cakes, so it just makes it that much better. Scott, any final words?
well, I'm gonna give the score. I'm gonna give my average score. So my average came out to 7.83, and my average is a 5, so that's a good score for me.
So you're saying your overall score is?
A 7.83.
Okay, and my overall score is a 7.5. Very nice.
Very nice.
All right, Scott. Thanks again for a guest tasting. Visit me on Instagram at King Cake Planet, and also go to www.kingcakeplanet.com.